So the next step is really to talk about domains. That was a dramatic pause, right? And domains are really, I kind of paused because I have endpoint connectivity options up here, and I'm like, that's not a very good description of domains. But domains are basically how we're going to connect to the fabric. And there's a couple different domains. We're going to talk about each one. We're going to lab each one for that matter. I'm going to give you a demo of all of them. But the four different ones are going to be physical domains, and that's for like connecting our bare metal hosts. If you have a bare metal like C-series server that maybe is not hosting ESXi and VMs, that would be a good example of a physical domain. Okay, again, bare metal hosts. We also have VMM domains. These are again our virtual machine manager domains. So if you're connecting off to a Microsoft Hyper-V environment, VMware ESXi/vCenter environment, those would be good examples of VMM domains. We also have layer 2 and layer 3 external domains. Again, you could hand off of the ACI fabric. Very common use case border leafs. Going to be if you're handing off to maybe a pair of routers that are hosting your WAN or MAN connections. We also have a lot of migration scenarios where maybe we're coming off, and actually let me go into transparent mode. I kind of talked about this a little bit in a previous demonstration, but we could be in a migration scenario where we brought ACI in a greenfield environment, and we still have these blocks of servers over here that are connected to this regular data center network, right? We're still running spanning tree or fabric path or something, and then internally here, as we go through time, we're migrating these guys to where they hang, off of the ACI fabric directly. Well, that may be a need, or a use case for having an external layer 2 handoff so that VLAN that these guys or girls ride upon, again, I think I used VLAN 100 in my previous example, is actually extended all the way up here, and basically we're taking traffic off of VLAN 100, maybe stuffing it into an endpoint group. So that would be the need for like an external layer 2 domain. But these are really the big four that we'll be dealing quite a bit with as we move forward in our discussions and our demonstrations. Now, these domains, like I mentioned, they're typically called the how of the fabric, meaning how do we connect devices to the actual ACI fabric, and this is going to be through the use of one of those four domain types. Again, we have the physical, we have the external bridged connections, the external routed, and then the virtual machine manager. Now, what's funny about these is we're going to be doing most of this configuration for these different domains, again, through the Fabric tab and access policies, because we're still dealing with what I call the physical fabric configuration. We're still trying to configure, how are we plugging stuff up to the fabric? What should we be expecting as we plug stuff up to the fabric? Is this just, again, is it going to be a bare metal host? Is it going to be an external, bridge connection for the fabric? External routed? Are we going to be using OSPF or EIGRP or BGP to route outside of the ACI fabric? Are we looking for a virtual machine manager like vCenter, for instance? What's really cool about these is that when we configure these domains, we're basically just going to configure the specific type of domain that we're looking for, and then we're going to reference the VLAN pools that we created prior to that. I did take a quote out of the Cisco Operating Application Centric Infrastructure Guide because I thought it was perfect. Domains act as the glue between the config performed in the Fabric tab and the policy model and EPG configuration in the tenant pane. So again, this is where I'm saying we're taking this physical fabric and we're trying to find a way to tie that to our logical tenant, right? So this is really where we tie that together through this use of the domain, okay? We're going to see there's also another construct that we have to kind of get done, right? And that's going to be our AAP, but this is really where we're saying how it's going to be connected. This again is the how of this configuration. So when we look at this, we had, our switch profiles, we had our interface profiles, individual interface selectors, interface policy groups. And then over here we configured our VLAN pools. Well, now we're bringing in our domains. Okay, so now we've got, maybe this external layer 2 domain over here, and it's containing or basically referencing this VLAN pool and then these encapsulation blocks that are contained therein. Same thing with this physical domain, contains these VLANs, and this domain contains these dynamic VLANs. So the last thing we're going to see that kind of ties this interface config and then this physical config together is going to be what we refer to as the AAP. And you'll see in my next presentation, this is kind of like the zipper, guys. This is where we zip all this up and send it down to the actual leaf switches. But the domain, again, this is describing how we're going to connect to the fabric and how we're going to use these different encapsulation blocks.